Hello, I'm Harry Flea TV. Remember it? No, you don't have to. Villains are what define a hero's journey in a story. They help the character go from point A to point B and drive the main character to overcome the obstacles that stand in their way. Typically, villains are often portrayed as narcissistic, cruel, unforgiving, and obviously an opposite to the character we're rooting for. But over the years, there's been a strange increase of sympathetic villains, bad guys you want to root for, and characters who are supposed to be pure evil, but the writers for some reason turn into anti-heroes. A good example of this would be the characters from the Sony Spider-Man Left universe. Characters like Venom, Morbius, and even Kraven, who've been turned into likeable anti-heroes. And although Venom can be argued, since he kind of became an anti-hero in the comics, the same can't be said for Morbius and Kraven. Morbius being a bloodthirsty, ruthless vampire who's willing to suck blood to survive, and Kraven being a literal animal hunter. Even the Joker falls prey to this trope, and even though this film does do well at actually portraying the Joker and still being a bad guy, despite his tragic backstory, the same can be argued that the Joker doesn't even need to be sympathetic, and he's perfect just the way he is, being Batman's opposite, and the fact that in the comics we barely even know what his origin is. The Joker's a manipulative narcissist who, bear in mind, would probably only conjure up a sympathetic sob story to reel in a victim of his schemes like Harley Quinn. And it's not just comic book films that have fallen into this sympathetic villain trope. You've got characters like Cruella de Vil, Maleficent, who've both got their own solo films, and even Captain Hook in the recent Peter Pan remake has been dumbed down to a tragic character. But what makes this so wrong, and what makes the trope bad, is that they forget to portray these characters as villains. They turn these classic villains into anti-heroes, and I'm getting really tired of it. We need to bring back evil again. We need to bring back evil villains. Now, I don't think the sympathetic villain trope is outright a bad thing. I think it can be done well. As I said, the 2019 Joker film is really good at portraying the Joker as an actual baddie, despite the sympathetic backstory. I actually also think the Penguin show does a really good job at playing into the sympathetic villain trope. We sympathise with Oswald Cobblepot in this show at first, but the more that's revealed, the more we realise how much of a bad dude he is. And this show does not let you forget that at the end of the day, Oswald Cobblepot is a bad dude. Yes, he might love his mother, but he's still a bad guy, and some of the things he does are extremely heinous and portray him as a complete psychopath. And even though he claims to do this all for the love of his mother, we can tell that he means business, and he's doing it all for his own gain as well. The show doesn't let you forget that the Penguin's a bad dude. However, that being said, sometimes it's just good to portray a villain as an actual baddie with no understandable motivation. I mean, yeah, some could argue that, that leaves the villain to be, flat and bland and not very complex, but really, some of the best modern day villains are the most evil people that don't need a sympathetic backstory, and that's okay, because it all depends on how these guys are written. If they're written well, you can really fear for them, hate them, and really root for the hero, because that's what a villain is supposed to drive the audience to root for our hero. You've got characters in Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, like Big Jack Horner, who last year became one of the most memeable and memorable cartoon villains to date. And he doesn't need a sympathetic backstory or a sad motive for what he does. He's just evil for the fun of it. He's just a sick bastard who's evil just because he's a dick. And that's what makes him so memorable. And you can't help but laugh at how evil he is and how much he takes pleasure in it. You've even got the embodiment of death, who does what any good antagonist should do: push the main character to achieve his goal. This terrifying bounty hunter pushing Puss in Boots to find the wishing star and get back his 9 lives. This guy was talked about everywhere on the internet and was talked about as the most terrifying villain in kids movie history, and yeah, I can see why. This guy is terrifying, and he does a great job at portraying the fear Puss and we, the audience, have for this character. Then you've got Art the Clown from the Terrifier movie, who is hilariously terrifying. His kills are brutal and will leave you squeamish, but also he is hilarious in his own twisted way, like any good villain. I think any good villain should have a balance of humour and fear about the character, and that's why characters like the Joker are so good. Then you've got the High Evolutionary from Guardians of the Galaxy 3, who I think is one of the best MCU villains to date. I mean, this narcissistic perfectionist created Rocket Raccoon, all for the sake of creating a perfect world in his vision, and he is very good at showing how evil and terrifying he is. This evil bastard is pretty much the reason behind Rocket's childhood trauma and the struggle he went through, and he has little empathy or regard for life, any sort of life, whether that be human or animal. This guy is evil incarnate. But by far the best evil villains in any media come from the Morgue Files, created by David Neer. I've talked in the past about this series, but for those who don't know, the Morgue Files is a horror anthology audio drama series created by content creator, musician, and YouTuber David Neer. And it is awesome. It is incredibly underrated and it deserves more attention. If you want a good example of pure evil, go and check out the Morgue Files. The one I want to talk about today is Jeffrey Mason. Probably one of the best versions of Jeff the Killer that's been written so far. This guy is evil, he's terrifying, and he's sadistic. Everything Jeff the Killer should be, and everything the original story should have been. This story portrays Jeff as an actual monster, and everyone around him as the victim. Whereas every other Jeff story portrays Jeff the Killer as tragic and sympathetic, this one portrays him as an absolute monster, and I love it. If you want a good Jeff the Killer story that actually portrays the character as scary, the Morgue Files Case 2 is right up your alley. If you want to check out the Morgue Files for yourself, then I'll leave a link in the description for the playlist in this video. But if you don't want to check the description, look up David Neer on YouTube, and all of his stories are on there. You will not be disappointed. There is a plethora of these flawed, demented, good, and evil characters in this amazingly, criminally underrated series. David Neer has managed to craft a world filled with these really well-written characters, and I highly recommend you check the Morgue Files out. Seriously, if you haven't already, go and check out the Morgue Files. You won't be disappointed. And if you haven't seen them, you are sorely missing out. And you are in for a good time. But that's all I have for you guys today. Tell me what you think in the description below. Do you think there should be more tragic villains? Or do you think the villains are best left as evil and scary? And before I go, I would just like to mention Goldilocks in Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, who also does the sympathetic villain well, and she's actually more of an anti-hero in her own right than an actual villain. So, with that being said, I hope you all enjoyed this video. And before I go, I'd just like to give a quick update. So, this will be my last video for a while. I'm not leaving the channel completely, but I decided to take a break from social media to kind of fix my mental health and kind of give myself a mental reset. I've explained this in the update video, so you can go check that out after this video, but with that being said, this will be my last video for a while until I get my head together and I'm all refreshed. I'm gonna take a break from all social media, and if you want to talk to me on Instagram, then my username is the same as my YouTube name. Just type Harry_FluTV_. But with that being said, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for all your support. It really means a lot. And I'll say this without sounding sappy, but you mean a lot to me. A lot of you. Thank you so much for the subscribers I have, for the support I've got, and I hope you all enjoyed the last couple of years I've had on here. This will not be my last video, but this will be my last video until probably the new year. So with that being said, I hope you all enjoyed yourselves. See you all on the flip side. I'm Harry FluTV, remember it, so you don't have to.